The NFL draft is right around the corner, and we've got another fantastic guest joining us on today's show. That is Michael Lombardi, former longtime NFL executive, general manager for the Browns. Also, I had to bring this up. I found this out when I was doing my notes, that Michael was a fellow former FCS long snapper and defensive lineman at Hofstra. So we've got a collective of New Jersey guys here on the show. We've got a collective of long snappers, but Michael, I appreciate you taking the time to join us. I know that things are certainly crazy right now with the draft cycle really starting to heat up and everything coming to fruition this upcoming Thursday.
Yeah, but there's only one athlete on the show, right? It's only
right.
Matt. So be clear. I mean, when you play at the level you and I played at, you're just playing because of the love of the game. We got a guy that played at a higher level, so that's always good. So it's good to be here. I appreciate you guys.
Yeah, I try to pretend.
Michael, I appreciate that. Thank you. Coming from a GM, that means a lot.
I try to pretend that I was as much of an athlete as Matt was, but we all know that's not true. Being a long snapper, being a specialist. But Michael, we've got so much going on right now with all these news and rumors swirling across the draft landscape. And just from your perspective, how much do you think for the average viewer, the average football fan, how much of this is real? How much are these rumors, these smoke screens actually real during this period of time about a week before the draft?
Well, I think you have to understand where a lot of this comes from. This comes from a false place, right? So where do all the rumors start? They start through people that work on the draft that are not in the league, that do the draft for a living, whether it's for the Worldwide Leader or for NFL Network. And so that's the basis of it. And then we've got, if you Google mock drafts now, I think 4.9 million come up. So everybody does a mock draft. And so what's happened is the reality is the perception of what the mock people are saying has become reality. And so when things are changing, then everybody's saying, well, this guy's slipping or this guy's moving up and all that, when the starting point maybe wasn't as accurate. And a lot of the information is predicated based on what other people think, not what people in the league think. So you've got to really weigh that. People are appalled that the Houston Texans wouldn't draft a quarterback. They're appalled by it. If you look at Davis Mills' numbers compared to Justin Fields without the rushing numbers, they both have won. Well, Mills has won 5 games. Fields has won 4. They both have won 5 games and over their 2-year career. Mills has thrown the ball better by far. But yet the Bears don't need a quarterback, but the Texans do. So a lot of that is perception and misconception. So you just got to weigh it out.
Yeah, for sure. Great point. It's getting to the point, too, where it's just another March Madness form, right? It's just let's fill out our brackets and see who's actually right. But when we find out after the process is that nobody knows really anything about it except for the teams in that room.
Right.
For you, put your GM hat back on, my man. Who was the best football player in this draft? Just overall football player. Who you going with? Who's your number one guy?
Jalen Carter's the best player, and it's not close. He's the best player by far. I mean, this whole Will Anderson is the greatest player. I mean, I've tried to make him I think he's a good player. Right. Is he Von Miller? No. Is he Bruce Smith? No. I mean, I don't know where this is coming from. Watch the tape, But Jalen Carter's the real deal.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
And he can change it. So, the best way to affect a quarterback in today's game is by getting inside pressure, by getting into the paint, by creating problems in front of the quarterback, not around them, not behind them. And so Carter can do that. And he's done it at a high level. He's done it on a field where there's been multiple number 1 picks. Yeah. And he's been as good a player as any of those. So to me, that's an easy one, just football talent. Now, you've got to weigh the character and the work habits and all that into the pick. But to me, that's a no-brainer. To me, he and Bryce Young are the 2 best players. If Bryce Young were 6'2", we'd be talking about a generational quarterback. Yeah. But he's 5'10", and that's the only reason why the Bears, to me, traded the pick was because you could never pass on him if he were 6'2". You might pass on him because there's no history of 5'10".
You brought up Jalen Carter, and I think that Matt and I both agree that he's the best player in this class. He's so talented, but then we had this tumultuous period at the beginning of the cycle with all the off the field concerns. From that front office perspective, when you're dealing with a guy who is really just stands out amongst the group, but has some of those question marks of, Can this be a guy who consistently be mature and show up on time and not make a dumb mistake during a game week? How do you approach that? How do you approach making that draft decision?
Well, I mean, it starts with really understanding the player and defining his character, and understanding what you're getting into, and can you build a support system around him that will highlight, his strengths and help eliminate his weaknesses. I mean, everybody has problems. Carter, the issues are serious on the campus of Georgia, and then the weight gain to me is another symbolic problem. So you just got to really dig deep into it and make sure you have the correct information. You have to understand that today's world, you're not getting reliable information from the schools or from anywhere because it doesn't serve them in the best interest to say that. So you have to find other ways and mechanisms to try to find out who you're getting. The rule of scouting is simply this: we have to know more about the player before we draft them than after.
Definitely. And then for the draft this year, what team is it that you see is really one or two draft picks away from, kind of being that middle tier team to being a real Super Bowl contender? Which team is just 1-2 guys away from picking the right guys at the right positions to get over that hump?
You look at Washington. If Washington had Lamar Jackson playing quarterback, I think we would be talking about them as one of the better teams in the NFC, right?
Right.
So, but they're not going to get a quarterback where they're picking, and they're kind of seemed in love with Sam Howell. I think any team in the NFC that could get a quarterback, because we know the NFC, Jalen Hurts is a really good player. Dak Prescott's a good player. Jared Goff's in the top 5. I mean, the NFC has a void of quarterbacks, where if the AFC, you've got a lot of really good quarterbacks. It's hard to even get in the playoffs with all those quarterbacks.
Right.
I think any team like the Giants or like Minnesota or even Detroit, Seattle, Detroit was a marginal playoff team. They didn't make it. I think they would have beaten Minnesota or the Giants had they played a playoff game against them at the end of the year. I think those are the teams that have to have really good drafts. Detroit has 2 number ones. Seattle has 2 number ones. I think the Giants are a team, they were 9-7-1. And, you look at their team, they weren't overly talented. They re-signed Daniel Jones. Are they going to be good enough? They need a really good draft. They need to keep getting better, younger players on their team. So Detroit's the same way. Detroit got better defensively. But really, when you look at their numbers defensively, Carolina ran for almost 400 yards against them in the end of the year, and it could have been about 600 had the safety not made about 2 tackles, right?
Yeah.
So, I think those are the kind of teams. Seattle has closed the gap in the West. To me, they're far and above the Rams. The Rams are an expansion team, basically.
Yeah,
they've got a really good quarterback. They got a great defensive lineman. And they've got a great receiver coming off an injury. But other than that, they have no other quarterback on the roster but Stafford. They can't. They're in such cap trouble. They can't do anything. And then Arizona is a disaster too. So the Seattle has a real chance to make hay in the West.
And I don't think the Rams have a long snapper right now. So I think either one of you could get another shot here.
Yeah, but they can't afford to pass the minimum. They got to take a cut. They got to take a vet. We would qualify for the veteran scale.
Right.
Rams. I mean, they have no money.
Oh, no.
I'm shocked that Sean went back. I mean, this is not a fix it up, put a couple patches on, and get out there. I mean, this is truly going to be a tough team to take. They traded Allen Robinson. Not that he played well for them, but name the other receiver: Von Jefferson. And Cooper Kupp coming off a knee, and then who else?
Ben Skoranek.
Going to get hurt.
Right.
It's amazing.
So from that angle, like the Rams it's really complex trying to fix that. I know it's a really broad question to ask, but how long does it take to fix a cap situation like that? It seems like they're just selling away everyone that they can to fix it.
Yeah, I think to me it's going to come down to when they didn't want to pay Stafford the $57 million that they owed him, but they had to. They tried to trade him, they couldn't. Yeah. Nobody was willing to take on that contract, so they got stuck with it. So they dug themselves a deeper hole. And if Stafford can't play this year for injuries or suffers another injury, that hole is going to get even deeper, and it's going to be harder to get out of because they had to commit to that. They went all in to win the Super Bowl, just like Tampa Bay went all in to win the Super Bowl too. Tampa Bay's in really cap trouble too. They only have 4 players that they could go to get a lower cap number. One of them, Shaq Barrett, he's not healthy. Mike Evans, could they do something with him? We know Devin White they want to trade. So it's a tough – when you go for a Super Bowl and you win it and you put all your chips in the middle of the table, there's consequences. And the rewards are great. You win it. But the after effect is harder.
Yeah, it definitely is. I mean, but at the same time, can't really blame them either. They got it. They got the Super Bowl win, and it is just one of those things. They rolled the dice. They got the W, and of course, we're just in that media presence right now where we're so just day to day by the weather of the day that we lose the sight of the fact that they are a Super Bowl champion team, and you really kind of can't take that away from their resumes going forward. But it is fascinating. As far as this draft goes. What is just one team that you think is going to be potentially trading with Arizona to get into that 3 spot?
I don't think a team wants to trade up. I think, Matthew,
Wow.
you do quarterbacks. Every quarterback, including Bryce Young, and his only issue is height, right? Like I said, if Bryce Young was 6'2", we'd be talking about a generational talent.
For sure.
We'd
It'd
be
be
talking
Joe
about
Burrow all over again.
We'd be talking about Joe Burrow all over again, right? Exactly. Took the words out of my mouth. But everybody else has got some issue.
Yeah.
Whatever that issue is. Richardson doesn't throw from the pocket, doesn't throw in rhythm. Will Levis handle poise under pressure. C.J. Stroud, the offense at Ohio State. Tell me Ohio State quarterback who's running that offense and has come in and played well. I don't want to hear about Justin Fields doing that because he doesn't throw the ball very well. So they all have problems. So why would I trade up to give an asset away when anybody I take is going to have a problem?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm not getting a clean player. That's why I think Bijan Robinson's going to be a top 10 pick because he's one of the clean players in this draft. Even though people say you can't take a running back that high. Yeah, you can. I mean, it's okay to pay Keenan Allen all that money at receiver, but it's not okay to pay Eckler. Eckler does more for the Chargers than Keenan Allen does.
Oh, yeah. I know. It's
right?
amazing.
So
is Bijan at the running back position? Is he a generational player for the running back position? Because we devalue as a football society now the running back position. Where when I was growing up in the game, it was just dominated by like the Corey Dillons of the world, right? Like every year, every game. Hey, let's watch Corey Dillon. He's going to rush for 2,000 yards again this season. What do you think about that?
I think you have to reclassify it, Matthew. I think it's really who's a weapon. So Eckler, 107 catches, averages almost 10 yards a catch. Red zone production. You can run with the ball. I mean, when you can play on all 3 downs and protection and do all that, you're a weapon. And now all of a sudden, like McCaffrey, you become a matchup nightmare. Now I can keep that back in the game. Say a team that even has, say Detroit drafts, Bijan Robinson, and they've got Swift, and you got 2 backs you can interchange. Yeah. And so now you're in base personnel, but really you could be in 3 receivers. You can move them around. You have to draft weapons. You can't just draft a position. How many receivers are busted in the first round that don't end up playing very well? Mm-hmm. I mean, look, you could trade for Cortland Sutton tomorrow from Denver. You could trade for Jerry Jeudy, a first-round pick. You got to get guys that can change the game, and that's the running back position. They have to do more in the passing game. When the Rams were great, Todd Gurley averaged 10 yards a catch.
I mean, arguably the MVP of the league that year.
Should have been.
I mean, absolutely. It really probably should have been the MVP that season.
And because of his impact in the passing game, and it wasn't screens and flares, right? Yeah. He had an impact. It's the same thing. If you're going to pay Saquon Barkley, he's got to be really good in the passing game. Now, he's improved his pass protection, but there was a time during his career he couldn't pass protect, which kept him off the field. So, like Kamara, his protection's good. He's a weapon. But you need another back to go with him because you're getting more out of him. So I think Robinson's value, when you look at it in that term, is really good. Whereas if you just say, well, he's a running back, no, that's not what you want.
Mm-hmm. Michael, last question. Oh, go ahead, Matt. Go ahead.
No, you're good. You're good. Go ahead, Joey boy.
Last question that I had was, we talked a little bit about the uncertainty at this quarterback position for the draft. And one guy who really piques my interest is Anthony Richardson, who's just a massive question mark. He's a big time project because of his newness to the game. He doesn't have a lot of reps underneath his belt, kind of like what happened with Trey Lance coming into the NFL, except Anthony Richardson's coming from the SEC. For a guy like that is going to take time, what do you see as what needs to be around him for someone like that to succeed? A very raw quarterback.
When I first saw Anthony Richardson, Joe, I said this guy has a chance to win the Heisman. But I thought he would need to go back and play in college. Him coming out this early, I think is a mistake. I really do. When Lamar was a sophomore at Louisville, my son was on the coaching staff there. And I would watch every one of those games. And I would tell Matthew, my son, I'd say, just play the other kid. He's more ready to play. And by the end of that year, against Texas A&M in the Music City Bowl, Lamar had his coming out party. And then next year he won the Heisman. And that was really, and then he came back for another year. And so I was hoping Richardson would go back with Billy Napier, play another year at Florida, and really develop. Like right now, he's a year away from being a year away. Like he's so raw. Yeah. There's no way you could put him on the field. It's like Malik Willis. I mean, Malik Willis has the distinction of the only quarterback I've ever seen in my 40-year NFL career who got benched mid-series in a preseason game. Because he was affecting the offense. He was affecting the other players. You couldn't evaluate the other players on the field because he didn't really know what he was doing.
Yeah.
And so to me, Richardson, I mean, at the end of the year, everyone said, including you, Joe, he needs another year. Now we're getting to the draft. We've played no more games, and people are saying, how are you going to magnify his talent? Well, it's going to be hard to because he's so raw. It's going to take a year to get him just ready to be able to compete. Like you can put him out there and let him run around. That's great. But, look, I mean, Justin Fields has fumbled 28 times running around. Like he's won 5 games, gained 1,000 yards running around. He averages 7 carries a game, 8 carries a game, but he's been sacked 91 times for an average of 7 yards a sack. How do you do that?
That was awesome, by the way. But all right, so say you're the Indianapolis Colts. You're the general manager of the Colts right now. You draft Anthony Richardson. Are you saying play him right away, or are you saying
you couldn't play him? Matt, you would hurt the other players. You can't stand in front of the team as a head coach and say, we're going to put him in the game, we're going to win games. He's the best player. You got to be able to have credibility with the locker room.
Right.
They all see his talent, but they know he can't handle it. It's just not fair to the kid either. You're going to put him out there, and he's going to get sacked. He's going to get the crap beat out of him.
I know.
He's going to get, you can't execute the offense. He's not going to reroute the protections. He's not going to do all these things. It's going to happen way too fast. So to me, that's why I think Levis is going to be their pick at Indianapolis. To me, if I were the GM of the Colts, I'd sign Lamar Jackson.
Well, Michael, we know you got to –
man.
Hopefully they can get him.
I like that a lot, though. I like that a lot.
Why would I not take a player that I know is good and take a chance on a player that I'm not sure is good?
And a player that's definitely totally underrated as far as a passer goes in the NFL. Underrated. I don't know what it is. Like, nobody respects him as a passer, and the dude is a really good thrower of the football.
He really is.
And just limited scheme-wise as far as what they've done in Baltimore a little bit.
I think it's been horrendous. And I think if you really understand Lamar, that where he wants to throw the ball in the middle of the field, when he had Hayden Hurst and he had Andrews, he was really good.
Right.
But if you keep trying to make him an outside 9 thrower, that's your fault. And that's what Baltimore kept trying to do. He's an inside the numbers thrower, and he's more effective than you think he is. Like this knock that he can't throw it is a complete joke. It's just all perception.
Yeah,
meanwhile,
for sure.
Justin Fields can throw the ball. He's a great thrower of the football. Where? I haven't seen it yet. Like, come on. Tell me and somebody drafts Trey Lance, the 3rd pick overall, off of what? Did you watch the Houston preseason game last year where they had to take him out? I mean, they had to call Jimmy Garoppolo back because they knew he couldn't play. So
yeah, for sure.
To me, I was
hoping they were going to call me, man. I was like, I'll be ready to go. But it is wild, and I think you make some fantastic points. My father and I were talking about the Anthony Richardson the other day, and I thought we both leaned on the play him and just learn through the mistakes, but we're seeing it more so as like there's no such thing as bad experience. At the same time too, we're looking at it from like the coach lens, not necessarily like the front offense lens, but it's like I'm like we'll make the offense super simple. We'll run RPOs, QB runs, quick game stuff, very simple reads, one side fields, not full field progressions, all that kind of stuff. And we talked ourselves into being like, if we're drafting Anthony Richardson, we're just going to play him day one, ready to go.
Yeah, I just can't see how you do it. I think it affects the rest of the team because
that's a great point.
You're gonna, look. It's like, Chicago can't win any games. I mean, think about this: when Lamar went in 2019, the Ravens were 4-5.
Yeah.
He took over the starting job. They won 6 of the 7 games. They lost to Kansas City. Tyreek Hill made this incredible 3rd and 15 play. Like no one else on the planet could have caught that ball. Mm-hmm. And he did. And they beat the Ravens that day in Kansas City. Lamar could throw it. It's your point. Everybody whereas this kid's just not ready to play.
Absolutely. Well, Michael, we know you got to get out of here because you got a lot of things going on leading up to the draft. Really appreciate you taking the time.
Appreciate it.
And it really means a lot, and I'm sure we'll check in with you again soon.
Anytime. I appreciate it. Matt, good seeing you. Joe, thank you so much. I'll get you a long snap and tape out. We'll compare notes.
Thanks, Michael.